Welcome to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know. Hello, Angie Lion here, your host of the Leader You podcast. Thank you for listening. Today I have an important topic that I want to talk to you about, which is leading from the inside out. And people have asked me, what do you mean by leading from the inside out? What does that mean to you? So that's what we're going to dive into a little bit today and really tackle what's underneath the surface. So we live in a society where we look at most things on the outside. So I want you to picture an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is only the things that you can see. And what I'm talking about is that big piece of the iceberg that's under the water that you can't see. So what we see in our society is externally is the title. It's the position, it's the money, it's the boat, it's what we have, what we wear, if we have wrinkles, if we don't, what we drive. And that's all the tip of the iceberg, the success script, and the societal culture that we live in. I'm talking about everything deeper than all of that, everything that's underneath the water, so to speak. So I'll share with what I'm talking about a story from my personal life to kind of share how this can show up and rock our worlds. So, from the years of 2009 to about 2014, those were the darkest years of my life. While things looked great on the outside, things were a mess inside. It was very painful time. Many of the things that were happening in my life were outside of my control. Um, Me and my family had recently repatriated back to the United States from us living in Shanghai, China, where we had lived for almost 3 years. And repatriating was actually harder on me than it was to move to China, if you can believe that. It was really hard because I had changed so much and I had came back with such different perspectives than I had left with. And I was still trying to fit in and figure out what my new roles were. And my marriage had been on the rocks before we had went to China, and the China thing was kind of something that we were doing to try to see if we could make things work. And right after we got home, um, and we were getting the kids settled, my mom, I was right back in the role of taking care of my mom and her addictions to her pain pills and to her mental illness. And I'd always been the parent in my relationships, so I fell right back into that role. And I kind of played the role as the family fixer. I was always the glue, the one who always has her shit together. And so a lot of people in my family have turned to me to know what to do. And, it wasn't very long before I was back in that role. And it was less than a year that I was back before she died unexpectedly at the age of 52. Um, and that was of sepsis that came on from pneumonia, that was misdiagnosed. But regardless, the whole story, it was not expected, and it was a very hard time. My mom wasn't in good health because she had autoimmune disease and rheumatoid arthritis, no doubt caused by her years of dis-ease in her soul and dis-ease in her upbringing and dis-ease in her mind and her soul. And we had a very tumultuous relationship, and I love my mom, and I still mourn the life that she didn't choose, and that the fact that she never completely healed from her childhood or her time here on this earth. And I still mourn that. And then next, my hero, my Auntie Babe, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I was made her power of attorney, which I was for my mom as well. and which meant that I was in charge of their well-being, right? Their care, their opinion, and you're dealing with their care, what to do next, their finances, selling of properties, all kinds of things that when you're already just lost, you just repatriated and you just lost your mom, you're now dealing with all of these types of things too. Not to mention, there's a lot of family at this time starting to voice their opinions on ways they think I should or shouldn't be handling things. Lots of armchair quarterback type behaviors. Nobody that really was ready to get in the ring. They just wanted to shout from the cheap seats. And really, what I learned through that experience was that I had a lot on my plate. And here I am um, trying not to get taken down by the comments from the cheap seats, and also um, on the verge of divorce. So soon, soon Alzheimer's took her life. And that was actually a blessing because if anybody has gone through Alzheimer's, they recognize how painful it is to watch somebody go from knowing you to not knowing you to not even being able to speak, and just to watch an empty soul. It's crushing. And so losing my Aunt Babe was one of the hardest things that ever happened to me. So the story doesn't end there. Right now, my dad dies. That within that next year, my dad dies unexpectedly in Arizona as they are um, snowbirding down there. And my dad was only 62, so I wasn't expecting him to pass. So soon, my mom, my dad, and my aunt are passed, and here I am, an orphaned adult with a divorce pending, and soon to be a single mom. So this was some seriously sucky times. You might want to call them life quakes, when shit hits the fan, when you hit rock bottom, whatever you want to call it. But the quick and dirty of the version is this is what happened. And looking back at those dark times, it's hard for me to even talk about them because I don't live them and they're not who I am. They're things that happened to me. Um, and I'm not even sure how I made it through all of that. I think it was by the grace of God and the people He put into my life at that time. Looking back on those times, it's hard to see, but I did have some really great friends and a really great small church family in Boise called River's Edge, which became my family. And they really lit a path for me in my darkest times. I'll never forget the kindness of those people, especially my pastor and his wife, Janet. Um, she was one of the most amazing and non-judgmental people I've ever met, who really helped me see my worth. And she recognized how painful it was to have stones thrown at me that were wrapped in Bible verses. At one point, she told me that just because someone wraps a stone in a Bible verse doesn't mean they aren't throwing a stone. As she referenced John 18, when Jesus said, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her." And she was one of my greatest teachers. I'm forever grateful for her and for Jason for being there in my darkest times, and also um, just being such a wonderful, wise, strong woman. We need more of these people in our lives. And one of the things that I would do in those darkest times is just sit there and I would sing this song on repeat. I knew that I was going to rise, and there's a song by Sean McDonald called Rise. And I would sing and I would cry and I would pour out my soul, and I knew that I had a bigger purpose and that than I was currently living out. And I just knew that I had to rise above it. Now, keep in mind, I still had children to take care of, and I still had a job, and I still had bills to pay, and I was living in Southeast Boise, and that's not a cheap place to live, especially as a single mom in an education role. So I had the support of my boss, Mona, and of her husband, Rick, and they really became These people really became my chosen family. I had support from my immediate family and and all that was going on under the surface. Those huge life quakes, those big life quakes, that the death, the divorce, the disease, all of that was so painful. And I didn't show up as my best self in those years, as you could probably imagine. It's not an excuse for bad behavior, but people have these things that happen in their life. They have life quakes, they have midlife crisis, they have everything falls apart at some point in your life. Sooner or later, if you don't face what's underneath, it all comes bubbling up to the top and you will be faced to force it, whether it's through pain and hitting rock bottom or or it'll be in the quiet times, but it'll come back. You can only bottle it up for so long. So it was painful and I didn't show up as my best self. And I have a lot of things that I'm not proud of in those years. I was merely surviving and barely, barely surviving. And I decided to face myself. Life was calling me for my appointment and I had to choose. And I had a couple of choices in front of me. Work on the parts of me that were broken, bruised, and victimized, or I could become a resentful, mean, hateful, spiteful old woman that had been modeled to me growing up. Obviously, as you can probably imagine and see by now, I chose to do the work. And I showed up for my appointment with life. And I started dealing with everything that was under the surface that I had suppressed and tried to hide for so long. All that shame, all that embarrassment, all that fear, lack of confidence, insecurity, comparison, envy, jealousy, and even self-hatred. Those were what was running the console for me. If you think about the movie Inside Out, this is the console. Those were the emotions running the show for me. So I knew in my heart and in my soul that I could pick up these pieces and that I could turn myself into something new and something beautiful, just like a mosaic. When you take a bunch of little pieces of tile and make something beautiful out of a lot of broken pieces. That's what I knew that I had to do, is start to pick myself up and rise from the ashes. And that's something that I know that is a great lesson. While it was a great lesson for me and I learned so much from it, it still sucks when you're in it and when you're going through the darkest depths of your soul and you're really struggling. But you have to find people that can help you and can support you through that. And I'm going to give you a few action items that you can take to start to move and have some momentum forward. Thank you for joining us on the Leader U podcast, sponsored by Black River Performance Management. Leader U is an important part of Black River's initiative to bring high-quality leadership development and organizational performance improvement solutions. Leader U is one of our initiatives that features different speakers whom provide their expertise and perspectives on a variety of workplace topics. I invite you to visit our webpage at www.blackriverpm.com. That is www.blackriver, the letter P as in performance, and the letter M as in management. We offer a wide range of services from training to performance improvement, coaching, retreats, and group facilitation and strategic planning. Our focus is to assist people in better understanding how to lead effectively and impactfully through a variety of evidence-based tools and practices. So the first thing you can do is be honest with yourself about what's going on under the surface. We live in such a shallow culture. You have to go soul deep and you really need to look at what's underneath and not the success script that life is giving you. Really look at what success means to you, and ask yourself some really difficult questions and ponder them for a while. One of them would be, what are you pretending not to know? And what would you do if you weren't scared to do this in this situation? And who could help you see your blind spots and also support you navigate this difficult situation with space and grace? We all have a lot of stuff going on below the surface level of our lives. And you can run, but you can't hide. You'll eventually, like I said, it'll bubble up from inside of you, or life will shake you and put you through some serious pain and some quakes that will bring you to your knees or not, or take you to your rock bottom, whatever you want to call it. But the pain is usually what makes us decide that it's time for us to change. It's time to take responsibility. It's time to take accountability. And you are responsible for your own life. And you can stop blaming others and stop being a victim and start creating a life that you're proud of and that you love. And remember that I can't want your success more than you. Thank you for listening to the Leader You podcast and for allowing me the space to create a soul-filled offering for you. May it make you pause. May it make you curious. May it make you reflect. May it make you take the brave steps. And may it spread ripples of impact that we may never even see. You are worth the work. Thank you. I love you all.